What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time to give you my upset alert games heading into week number 12 of the 2023 college football season. We got officially a couple more weeks to go here in the 2023 season, as we're going to give you my upset alert games heading into week number 12 of this 2023 season. And looking back to my upset alert games from last week, we had a couple upsets that turned out to be upsets on one of our upset alert games. We saw, of course, UCF blow out Oklahoma State, and then the other upset was Missouri upsetting Tennessee. We did miss another game that we saw. It was Texas Tech upsetting Kansas, so we did miss that game from last week, but we're going to give you, again, my upset alert games heading into the 12th weekend. And again, we have another big-time weekend coming up here in college football in the month of November, and I think more than likely we could see some upsets this week. So, again, how this upset alert video works, I give you 8 games total, 4 games each. 4 of the games that are most likely to be upsets, and then 4 games that are most not likely to be upsets. And in order for me to call it an upset, the spread has to be single digits in order for me to call it an upset alert type game. And again, I just do top 25 matchups, top 25 versus unranked matchups. And again, whoever that highest ranked team is going into this weekend, that team is going to be on upset alert. And again, we're doing our playoff top 25 teams now, so let's get right into it. We'll start with the most not likely upset alert category. And we'll start with Michigan and Maryland. This game will be at noon Eastern time on Fox. Michigan favored by 19 points in this one. Michigan coming off of a win against Penn State. Obviously, they're without Jim Harbaugh for the rest of the year in the 3 regular season suspension. Michigan, though, looked really good in the running game last week. Maryland, they've been kind of an up and down team this year. You know, they're sitting there at 6-4. Yes, they're bowl eligible. But, you know, like I said, they've been up and down this year. I don't really expect an upset here to happen, to be honest. I know Maryland is playing at home in this game. They do sometimes have a really good offense. But Michigan, the way they ran the football last week, I just think that's going to carry the momentum going into this weekend. I don't really think an upset is going to be likely to happen. And plus, with Jim Harbaugh suspended, you know, Michigan obviously I think will be motivated enough to go on the road and defeat Maryland. So Michigan, again, a big favorite in this game as well by 19 points, and this game will be on Fox at noon Eastern time. So we got back-to-back noon games here for Michigan, and also they're ranked number 3 in the playoffs, still undefeated. So let's now go to the second game, and it's Florida-Missouri at 7:30 Eastern time on ESPN. Missouri favored by 11.5, and the over and under for this one is at 58.5. Missouri at number 9 in the playoff rankings. Just a few, last night, I should say. Missouri, this is the highest I've seen them ranked in, the history of college football ever since the 2014 season. They absolutely demolished Tennessee this past weekend. The defense really dominated. The offense did their work as well, even though they didn't score 40 points in that game. But, the defense was the story of that game. Florida coming off a very tough loss to LSU on the road in Death Valley, so they're playing in back-to-back road games. This is a must-win situation here for the Gators. I mean, they have had a very disappointing season now. They have a 50-50 record right now at 5-5. They have to win this game in order to get to a bowl game, but also they have to win next week's game as well to probably make it to a bowl game. But it's against Florida State. They're rival next weekend at the Swamp. It's going to be a very tough game next weekend. But are they focused enough on this Missouri team? Are they focused for next week, or are they focused on, the next weekend? We'll have to see and find out what this Florida team is capable of. I don't really expect an upset here to happen. Missouri has been a pretty good football team this year, and I think they'll be well motivated in this game. So this game will be a night game as well at 7:30 Eastern time. We've seen Florida struggle in night games as well this year. So this will be on ESPN. Again, the Tigers are favored by 11.5. So let's now go to the third game, and it's Oklahoma and BYU here in the Big 12. This game is also at noon Eastern time on ESPN. Oklahoma favored by 24.5, and the over and under is at 57.5. I could see why the number is really big in this one, because Oklahoma's coming off a very big win against West Virginia, even though they gave up like 30 points last week to West Virginia. But Oklahoma's got some life. They still have a chance to make the Big 12 championship, based off of what happened last week into Oklahoma State and Kansas. Even though those 2 losses come to both of those teams, I think Oklahoma still has a chance to maybe run the table and probably win out and go 10-2. They're ranked number 14 in the playoff rankings. So you look at BYU this year, they've also been an average team. I don't really expect an upset here to happen, but, this is the month of November, and, based off of what the Big 12 was like last weekend, it was definitely, chaotic in that conference last week. Again, we saw, two upsets, two average teams in the Big 12 last week pull off some upsets. And BYU is one of those average teams that could probably pull off an upset here. But again, the Sooners are a big favorite in this game. I don't really expect an upset here to happen, but, you never know what can happen here in the Big 12, like based off of from last week. But again, Oklahoma's got momentum going into this game. I mean, obviously, will they carry that momentum? They lost 2 straight, and they finally snapped that losing streak last weekend. But we'll see what happens if BYU can pull off an upset. Again, I don't really expect an upset here to happen, but this game will be at noon Eastern time, and again, the Sooners are favored by a lot, 24.5, and the over and under is at 57.5. Let's now go to the last game now, and that is Georgia and Tennessee, 3:30 Eastern time on CBS. Georgia favored by 10.5 in this one, and the over and under is at 59.5. I've done a game preview / game prediction on this game on Sunday, and I did pick Georgia to win this game by at least 17 points. And again, I'm just very shocked about that spread number. I don't understand why Georgia is only favored by 10.5. And like I said, maybe it's just because Georgia is heading on the road in this game in a very tough environment at Tennessee. Tennessee coming off that beatdown, though, against Missouri. They be affected from that game from this past weekend, or were they just not focused on Missouri? Maybe they were focused on Georgia going into this weekend, and also Georgia is the number 1 team now in the playoff rankings. They're sitting there at 10-0, heading into their last SEC game here. Georgia has already clinched the SEC East, so this is not a very important game for Georgia, but it's also very important a little bit just because they have to still remain undefeated, because I think Tennessee would definitely ruin Georgia's playoff hopes. I don't really expect an upset here to happen, to be honest. If Tennessee was sitting here at 8-2, if they would have beaten Missouri last week, they definitely would have been, Georgia definitely would have been on upset alert this week. But again, I don't really expect an upset here to happen. I think Tennessee is not on Georgia's level, just like I said from this past Sunday. This game will be at 3:30 Eastern time on CBS. Again, it's in Knoxville. Very tough place to play here for this Georgia team. But again, they're only favored by 10.5. So these are the 4 games that are most not likely to be upsets this weekend. Let's now go to the games now that are most likely to be upsets. We'll start with Kansas State and Kansas. This game is at 7 o'clock Eastern time on Fox Sports 1. Kansas State favored by 8 points in this one, and the over and under is at 56.5. Kansas State sitting there at 7-3. This is another team that I think still has some life left ahead of them, for the Big 12 championship spot. I don't think they're going to quite make it in there, but this is a really good Kansas State team. They have definitely shown us why they can compete, with Texas and all those top teams in the Big 12. But they're taking on their rival Kansas here. Kansas is coming off a 3-point loss to a pretty average Texas Tech team last week. It was very shocking to see the Jayhawks lose that game from last week. That was definitely a very disappointing loss and very unacceptable loss if I was a Kansas fan. But they're taking on their rival Kansas State here. This is a rival game. You never know what can happen here. Obviously, Kansas State is the highest-ranked team here going into this weekend, but both of these teams with identical 7-3 records. Kansas State, surprisingly, is not leading this series against the Jayhawks in the football rivalry, but Kansas State has dominated this series as of late. They have won 14 years in a row. Can the Jayhawks finally snap that winning streak this weekend? We do expect kind of an upset here to happen, but again, this game will be at 7 o'clock Eastern time on Fox Sports 1. And again, Kansas State favored by 8 points, even though they're heading on the road here this weekend. All right, next up, we got Louisville and Miami at noon Eastern time on ABC. Louisville favored just by 1 point, and the over and under is at 46.5. Louisville did not look really good this past week against Virginia. They were up 14-0. But, they were kind of, sluggish against a really bad Virginia team. So they're sitting here going on the road to face a Miami team that's been very inconsistent at times and also very consistent at times. Miami last week nearly pulled off an upset against their rival Florida State. They had a turnover there at the end of the game, and that kind of changed the difference. Tyler Van Dyke's been having a really up-and-down season. One thing that Miami needs to do is definitely protect Tyler Van Dyke. Going to have to give him plenty of time to throw the football downfield. I wouldn't really be shocked if we saw an upset here, to be honest, but that would definitely probably ruin Louisville's chances of probably making it to the ACC championship because, you know, if Louisville loses this game this weekend, it's kind of like a tiebreaker between the Tar Heels and, of course, Louisville. But Louisville's got to, obviously be really consistent in this game. Like I said, they weren't really consistent last Thursday night against Virginia. So I wouldn't really be shocked, like I said, if an upset here happened this weekend. But again, this game will be at noon Eastern time on ABC. And again, the Cardinals are favored by 1 point. And they're also expecting a defensive battle in this game, which I think that's really going to be the likely case here in this game this weekend. All right, we stay in the ACC here. We got North Carolina and Clemson up next. This game is at 3:30 Eastern time on ESPN. Clemson, even though they're not even ranked, they are favored at home by 6.5 points, and the over and under is at 58.5. I mean, what in the world? I mean, Clemson is favored by 6.5 against a number 20 ranked team like North Carolina. North Carolina ranked number 20 in the playoff rankings last night. They're sitting there with 8-2. Again, you know, Clemson is favored by 6 points. I really don't agree with that spread. I think it should be at least by a field goal. And plus, I don't really care if Clemson is favored by, you know, in this game because they're playing at home in Death Valley, but I just don't agree with that spread. I think it should be at least by a field goal or maybe by a point because this is definitely a very tough game to call. You know, Clemson, obviously, they had that upset win over Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. Could they carry that momentum? Clemson looks like they're getting better each and every single game, so I really wouldn't be shocked if an upset here happened. But this is a very important game for North Carolina. They're coming off that double overtime win last week against Duke. Can they carry that momentum in going into this weekend here in Death Valley? This is a very tough place to play here if you're a North Carolina fan. North Carolina, again, they have 2 bad losses on the year with Georgia Tech and Virginia. We've seen them inconsistent at times this year, and definitely on the offensive side of the football. There has been some turnover issues as well for North Carolina. But again, I wouldn't really be shocked if an upset here happened. You know, Clemson obviously pulled off the upset a couple weeks ago. Can they do that again and finish out the year of 2023 pretty strong? They're going to go to a bowl game at least, but, you know, they want to finish out the year really strong and carry that momentum next year. But again, Clemson is favored by 6.5, which I really don't think that makes any sense. I think Clemson should only be favored by 3 points. I know they're at home. They definitely, you know, should be favored, you know, in this game because they're playing at home, but not by that much points, by 6.5, especially against a really high-powered North Carolina offense. But let's go to the last game now. Again, this game will be at 3:30 Eastern time on ESPN. And again, Clemson favored by 6.5. Let's now go to the last game now that is most likely to be an upset alert type game. And this is perhaps the biggest game of the weekend, and it's Washington and Oregon State. Game is at 7:30 Eastern time on ABC. Oregon State favored by 2.5, and the over and under is at 63.5. This is, in my opinion, the biggest game of the weekend. Washington undefeated at 10-0. Oregon State sitting there at number 11 and 8-2 on the season. They've been having a really good season. They have a really couple bad losses on their schedule. You know, only one bad loss, I should say, of course, to, you know, Washington State early in the year. But that loss to Arizona, that's really a good loss for them now. They're sitting there at number 11 now in the playoff rankings. Washington, this is definitely a trap game, like I mentioned yesterday in the game preview / game prediction video. I do really expect an upset here to happen. I think it's one of these games that Washington definitely chokes. I think a turnover probably changes the game as well here, like I said yesterday as well. And this is a tough game to call. In the preseason, I did pick Oregon State to win. So, again, I'm sticking with my preseason pick. I do like Oregon State here to pull off an upset. Plus, they're playing at home. And plus, even though they're not the highest-ranked team, they are still favored here by 2.5. So, again, Oregon State, they're playing at night as well. So, it's going to be a very, very big environment here in this one, especially when you're going up against a top-5 team like Washington. And again, Oregon State might have a chance to make the Pac-12 championship if they can pull off an upset. And they also have a really good opportunity next weekend to, you know, probably boost their resume with a win over Oregon. So Oregon State here sitting at 8-2. Again, I am predicting an upset here to happen. I'm not trying to disrespect Washington. I know they're a really good team, but I do expect this one to be an upset alert type game. Just because it's the month of November, anything can happen here. Also in the Pac-12, it's definitely a very competitive conference. And again, I'm just going to miss it, you know, a lot next year. So Oregon State, again, favored by 2.5. Expecting a lot of points scored in this game between these two teams, and it will be at 7:30 Eastern Time on ABC. And those are my upset alert games heading into Week 12 of the 2023 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about these upset alert games. Who do you see getting upsetted this weekend here in week number 12? We'll find out here as we got a couple more weeks to go here in the 2023 college football season. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.